Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at Greybau uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. Very excited about today's guest. First though, as usual, I like to explain why I wear the shirt. Unafraid is not a proclamation. This is the name of a company owned by a man named Eddie Penny. And I was not aware as I sat down to watch a Sean Ryan podcast episode in May of 2023 that Eddie was about to change the entire trajectory of my life. At that point, I was a retired 30-year police officer, retired for just about a year. And shortly before retirement, I had been experiencing bouts of anger, depression, rage. I was actually on a long-term line of duty injury. I got hurt in September of 20, so I had time to think for those preceding 2.5 years and realized something was going on. So as I watched Eddie on that Sean Ryan podcast, he was telling the story of the Extortion 17 incident in which a Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan by insurgents, killing all 38 aboard, including 17 SEALs. It was the largest loss of community ever in one event. Included in the dead was Jason Workman, Eddie's best friend. And as Eddie recounted that story, he was visibly upset, rightly so. I simultaneously began thinking about a call that I had buried 5 years before that involved a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. And as I thought about that call and watched Eddie, I think Eddie subconsciously gave me permission to cry, and I absolutely started bawling like a baby. Kind of put two and two together rather quickly, realized I was suffering from some sort of PTSD and wanted to heal. I didn't want to live with that the rest of my life. Started researching modalities. Psychedelics became something prominent, and decided that ayahuasca was calling me. So I had journeyed with Aya March 1st of 2024. My wife and I went to a facility called Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church in Orlando, Florida. Literally changed my life over the course of a weekend. After the first journey, or as I was coming out of it, the universe and I was speaking. I know it sounds weird if you never journey with psychedelics, but conversation was occurring. The universe essentially told me that I was healed from my PTS. It's not a linear healing line. I'm not this healed individual. I go through things every day like everyone else. But for all intents and purposes, that PTS, she said, was healed. And my life's purpose was to go forth and help other first responders or vets heal theirs. Said, okay, out loud, having no idea how I was going to implement it. But one thing I decided to do was start this podcast. So with that, I'm excited to introduce my next guest. He is Jason Greybau, the oldest of 4 kids and a divorced father of 2 boys and 1 girl. Jason grew up in Cypress, California, and served 20 years in the U.S. Navy with roles ranging from air traffic control to unmanned aerial systems operations in support of SEAL Team 3, including 2 deployments to Iraq. In 2024, he was found not guilty at a special court-martial, yet was still reduced in rank and medically retired for PTS and TBI, and is now rated 100% VA P/T and SSA disabled. That'll be Social Security Administration, for those who don't know acronyms. After a brutal transition out of the military and major personal upheaval, Jason was forced into a complete psychological, emotional, and spiritual reconstruction that shaped his understanding of resilience, identity, and purpose. When traditional treatments failed, he turned to non-traditional modalities, including ayahuasca, bufo, alvavirus, rias, and psilocybin, gaining deep spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and neurobiological insights. Today, he's an outspoken advocate for veterans navigating PTSD and TBI, active in a veteran-led group in Newport Richey, Florida, and engaged in the emerging field of, and this is pretty funny, brother, but I can't read the last word because it's blocked by something. Do you know that last word for the bio?
Psychedelic, I would imagine.
Thank you. Psychedelics. Rookie mistake here, but I apologize. Glad you have me to. I'm glad to have you to clean up my mistakes, brother. Great to have you on the show. Welcome,
dude. Thank you. First off, your intro was pretty powerful. That's I enjoy hearing things like that because it seems to be a reoccurring theme that you hear others talking about something, and then it reminds you of something similar or adjacent that you've gone through. But again, thank you for inviting me onto this and giving me the opportunity to be of service to others. And I believe we both have the shared same interest that if this can touch just one person, then it's all worth it. And I would much rather reach out to people that are considering a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And if they can align with something that you and I talk about today and just grasp onto hope and hold on, then I would feel that we both succeeded today.
Exactly. That's exactly what I say before every recording of this episode is let's go change one person's life. Well said. And yeah, I kind of went through all my stuff and then realized that I need to tell my story. We all need to tell our stories because there's someone out there right now. My story may not resonate with someone. Yours may do exactly that. And Eddie Penny, listen, if he didn't get emotional on that podcast, my life would be vastly different right now. So it's incredible that him allowing himself to become vulnerable literally changed my life. And I just want to pay it forward doing it to other people because, especially as we both know, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is looked at as weakness from a lot of people when in fact it's a sign of absolute strength. So that is my biggest message that I want to get out there on a daily basis, that it is strength, not weakness.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And, something you mentioned there about vulnerability and authenticity, to me, that's speaking truthfully. You're not hiding behind a mask. You're not hiding behind anything. You're being raw and real. And as you just said, that takes a tremendous amount of strength when a lot of people have a different viewpoint and they look at it as a sign of weakness, because some people, when you show them yourselves, they've learned over time that that can be used and manipulated against them. So some people, understandably so, do hide aspects of themselves from the world because they've learned the hard way that in doing so, sometimes it can turn against you. And
Absolutely.
I like also how you mentioned, it's a big word, but it's something you just described phenomenally, is the interconnected of pretty much humanity, on how much influence Eddie had on you. And then it changed your course, which changed your wife's, which changed everybody you talk to and everybody you speak to. So that trajectory change that started with him ricocheted into you and it's ricocheting into others, which in turn creates a monumental change for society, hopefully for the better.
Exactly. As my buddy Wiz Buckley says, you put the ladder down for others and help them. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And kudos to you because, people watch these things who have never appeared on podcasts. But when you get on there and tell your deepest, darkest secrets and cleanse your soul to the world, I'm not saying there's going to be millions that see this, but there's going to be enough people. I don't care if it's one person. You get on and publicly speak about your lowest of lows a lot of times. And it takes guts. A lot of people would not do that. They would not be courageous enough. So in doing that in furtherance of helping others is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the purest things you could do. So
I agree.
thank you again.
And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I think when you look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth, it becomes monumentally easier to speak truthfully in front of others. And to me, truth is also very closely aligned, if not synonymous, with love, like actual real love. To speak truthfully to someone, whether it's your dude that, again, you're like having a heart to heart with him that he may not want to hear, or your spouse or whoever, having the willingness to sit in that uncomfortability with somebody requires love.
Yeah.
And that again is something that I try and do for myself, for others, and however I can be of service. I'm a big proponent of that. That's something that's really aligned with kind of how I operate. And something you mentioned there from Wiz that I absolutely agree with, I just look at differently, is, it's kind of a phrase that I kind of made up myself, but angels pull up and demons pull down. So you use the ladder metaphor there, but to me, that kind of, saying the same thing in different ways.
Exactly. And for those out there, when you do things like this, you're going to get, I don't want to say hate. Well, you may get some hate, but never forget this. People punch up. They never punch down. So if you get hate from people, like I just did a big podcast, and I rarely read comments, but I was reading some comments, and they just humor me, to be honest with you. Like I'm just here trying to tell my story, trying to help others. I'm far from perfect, which I admitted on the podcast. I literally talked about the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life, and then people just crucify for them. So, I don't care whatsoever. I've forgiven myself. I tell these stories to help others. Yeah, I went to rehab for an opioid addiction, and never did I think that it was going to be something that could benefit anyone. But now, when I go into a room or I speak and tell my story, I just have credibility with people, and they trust me and they understand. No one's getting on there going to speak about going to rehab and how embarrassing and humiliating it was, and all the events leading up to it. Um, for anything other than wanting to help people, I'm not trying to make my light shine by talking about the worst things or biggest mistakes I've ever made.
Yeah, that would not be the way to most people go about it. Trying to shine light on themselves when it's in their deepest, darkest days. Yeah,
Exactly.
but again, that goes back to being again truth, and again, you kind of open arms, going, "This is me." And as you touched on there again, forgiveness. I'm a wholeheartedly believe that when you forgive yourself, you must also then forgive others.
Absolutely.
Again, we briefly talked on you. There's a lot of teachings that I align with that is a fundamental principle, and I think that leads to a different way of viewing others and oneself.
100%. Absolute 100%.
Hmm.
I've noticed things. We'll get into it a little further here. But yeah, there's so many changes that have occurred in my life over the past couple of years that it's incredible. Just a different man. But yeah, we're going to get into your story about that as well. But let's start with young Jason. How'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? How was family life? Episode is brought to you by Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, a veteran-owned, family-run clinic led by a retired first responder. At Cutting Edge, they help men and women rebuild strength, focus, and vitality through advanced hormone therapy, peptides, and performance-based weight management. Whether you've served your country, your community, or your family, Cutting Edge helps you get your edge back safely, professionally, and with people who understand what service takes out of you. Cutting Edge offers individualized care with no monthly fees or contracts. Learn more at cuttingedgetestosteronetherapy.com. Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, built by those who serve for those who still do.
Sure. As you mentioned, I grew up in Cypress, California. That's in Orange County, California. I was the oldest of four. It was with my mother and my stepfather, so I had a different biological father. He left when I was a year and a half, so for all purposes, I never met the guy. I don't believe that's something that my mother ever truly recovered from, but we'll get into that most likely later.
Okay.
I grew up, again, I can't really call it good or bad. I would say there was more good than anything, but again, it's how you kind of look at everything. Played baseball growing up. That was kind of the everything to me. And then that was pretty much my extracurricular activities. And as far as the home life, there was, I like to, my stepfather taught me several things. One, he taught me hard work. He taught me the importance of there always being food on the table. He always, the importance of that. But he also, through his actions, gave me the ability to read people very, very well. Because that was something, again, you're shaking your head, you understand what I'm saying there. That was something that as a kid, I had to learn and register his emotional state and completely suppress mine. So basically, I tuned into him, turned mine off, and that way I could read a room in a fraction of a second. Which again, when you're young, that it's kind of a curse, if you will. It's not exactly enjoyable,
Right.
but that has served me later in life. I mean, it took me years to kind of hone it a little bit better, but that was something that now is kind of a gift. So again, the curse turns into a blessing later on in life.
Right. And just so
And
people
then
understand who may be not picking up on this, you mean you had to become almost hyper vigilant to read him because he was, I'm assuming, an emotional guy, maybe had a temper, yelling at you. So
oh
you had
yeah,
to see what his mood was like to know whether it was time to show some ass or you were safe to stay in the house around him at that point.
that is absolutely accurate. Yeah, you worded that much better than I did. Yep, that is very accurate. And again, I've learned over life not to blame him. The dude had his own childhood.
Yep.
Dude was doing the best he could. Again, there's four kids. It was the late '80s, early '90s. Shit's just how it is. I don't no ill feelings there.
Right.
And then so that means that obviously that trick. There's numerous things that trickled into self worth. avoidance of people. There's numerous things that cascaded after that, later into my, I would say, early adult years.
Okay.
And then aspects of my my mom was very, she helped out with sports. She was involved with the kids, but this one's a little hard to put words to. She was physically present, but emotionally completely absent. So that is, I didn't learn emotions. Again, people like to say the nurture, the feminine, whatever that kind of thing is. But I never learned that because my mother herself didn't know that. And she kind of, like I said earlier, after her and my biological father divorced, I don't think she ever fully recovered. So I think majority of my childhood, she had undiagnosed depression, which is not easy on children with that environment. It's pure chaos, essentially, from the anger and then the depression. There's no one that's a stable adult, if you will.
Right.
Which in turn, I became my own stability. I had to learn that at a young age to kind of learn to rely on myself and not necessarily parents. Again, nothing against them, but I had to learn that at a younger age to rely on myself, which again, when you're young, not necessarily good. But as you get older, it's a benefit to be able to lean on yourself, vice the opposite of most people that tend to lean on others and don't know how to lean on themselves. So there was good and bad from that. Which in turn, again, not having a big connection with my mother, that led to me being quite the promiscuous young man when I was younger. And that kind of carried over into the Navy as well. And lust was a very difficult thing for me to overcome.
Okay.
That was something that was very hard. And then I also inherited drinking, as that was something that was also very prevalent in my childhood home.
Did your mom and stepdad drink?
Just my stepdad. My mother did not. My stepdad, he wasn't like sloppy or anything like that. He just, again, what I would attribute to the traditional 80s and 90s, after work, cracked beers, hung out in the garage. But again, food was always on the table. Bills were always paid. So, call it a functioning, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But again, it's still nonetheless a pattern that I inherited. Not blaming that, when I got to be an adult, I had to look in the mirror and be like, you need to change that shit. So I can't blame him. That was on me.
Yep.
But it was definitely something I picked up, and I'm sure he picked up, as a coping mechanism for whatever he was dealing with as well.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone last night about that, how it, addiction, I look at addiction totally different now. These substances that people use, that I used, it is the way that you're able to navigate life. Without
100%.
them, man, it would be much tougher. I'm not advocating their use, just explaining why most people use them who get addictions, not just socially.
Absolutely. And addictions, most people attribute to alcohol or drugs. You can be addicted to all kinds of things. The addiction is just it can be dopamine hits. I mean, there's numerous things that you can get addicted to.
Yeah.
Thoughts, behaviors, exactly. Yep. Food.
Porn.
It's not just, most people just attribute it to some sort of alcohol or drugs, but many people have some sort of addiction, whether it's routine. There's a plethora of different addictions.
Yeah. You can have an exercise addiction. I've seen people who are, out of their minds with exercising constantly. Whatever it takes to not think about what you don't want to think about. And just distract you.
That is, very accurate. Again, you've done a lot of soul searching to come up with that one. It's a thing that allows you to change the way that you feel normally by altering it with some sort of substance, or just, again, like you said, taking your mind off it, whatever have you. Which, again, going from childhood, that, again, it wasn't bad, wasn't good. I didn't feel love in the house. Most of my younger years and my teenage years, I was pretty convinced my stepdad hated me. Okay. But again, I think that's not me saying that most people go through that or most dudes go through that, but I do think that there's something when two men are in the house, there does tend to be some sort of conflict. But, things were what they were.
Yeah. How was the relationship with siblings?
Oh, my little sisters, they're, again, awesome. Even though, I didn't really understand at a young age. They were my half sisters. I looked at them as like my complete full sisters. They look at me like I'm their actual, they've never called me a half brother or anything like that. They've referred to me as their brother or as their older brother. So great relationship, and that I kind of looked at them that like I was their father. Not that my stepdad wasn't active or anything, but that was kind of the familial role that I fell into. Because again, it's kind of traditional for the older one to kind of assume that role or the helping role, if you will.
Right.
So when they were younger, that was kind of the way in which I looked at them. And now that they're, in their 30s, it's kind of, I look at them like, holy shit, you're a grown ass adult now. You have that complete different look at people versus your little sister, like, and they're married, have kids. It's a complete life trajectory change, viewpoint, at least when it comes to that.
Oh, no doubt. So you're taking on that protective role there as a youngin', it sounds like, which
Absolutely.
is great for your sisters, man, having protective older brother. So now as you're going through high school, are you having any thoughts of getting into the military? Is this something you thought about when you're young, or just kind of just develop later?
I didn't come from a military background. There was no one in my immediate vicinity or family that was from military. So I didn't really even know what to expect. But like most people from my era, 9/11 happened, and that was kind of the turning point. I didn't want to go to college. I threw out my arm playing baseball when I was in high school. So there went my baseball dreams. And naturally, running from one home to something else that has a little bit more structure, I went to numerous recruiters' office. The first one, again, this is how naive I was. The first one was the Air Force door, knocked on that, talked to that recruiter. And that recruiter, asked me a very simple question they ask you in the intro is, have you ever done drugs? Again, mind you, I was from Orange County and I was also a surfer. So I responded accordingly and truthfully. I said, dude, I'm fucking high right now.
I bet he's not heard that response too many times.
I don't think that he was
Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, I don't think he was prepared for that. So long story short, the Air Force, ended up kind of marking me as a no-go, and out the door I went. And then the next recruiter I learned from that. Next door was the Army, and talked with that recruiter. Originally signed up for infantry, and towards the process, he kept telling me I wanted to be a tank operator. And I kept telling him I fucking don't. And that guy and I, we got into it, turned into a verbal, almost physical altercation. And it came to be that I was not Army material.
Wow.
So out the Army door I went. And so the whole process I'm learning. And finally I just walked into the Navy and I just said, hands up. I was like, just please let me in. And of course, when you do that into a recruiter's office, they're like, oh yeah, we got you. So shortly thereafter, they signed me undesignated, and I'm pretty sure I was in boot camp within probably a month. And in boot camp, that was when I was assigned air traffic control. I didn't know what air traffic control was. I thought everybody in the military was, Rangers, SEAL. I thought, again, super naive. I did not know shit about the military. So I thought everybody was doing,
cool
big
shit.
Things. Yeah, cool shit. Better way to put it. And that was, again, I had absolutely no idea. So like I said, boot camp was assigned air traffic control. And, I believe that was kind of God helping me out because, going to the boat undesignated that would not have been good. I would not have enjoyed that. I was on a carrier. I saw undesignated dudes. They were doing just not very fun jobs.
Yeah.
So
doesn't sound
grateful for that. So I went to air traffic control school. That was in Pensacola, Florida. That's not much eventful there. And and then after that, I got stationed in a lovely place called Naval Air Station, Fallon, Nevada, which is about an hour east of Reno in the middle of absolute nowhere. Wow. So again, mind you, sticking with psychology and mental health, you have a kid that grew up in Orange County, California, surfing, joined the Navy, and I, again, ignorance, thought that I was going to be stationed somewhere on a coast, and I somehow ended up getting stationed on one of the very few land places, again, that the Navy owned. So huge shock there.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the town was a very small town. And, I ended up actually driving through the town because it only had one light. in that town. So I drove through that. Yeah, that small of a town originally back in 2004. Drove straight through it. Ended up calling my sponsor for to check in. I'm like, dude, where's this place? I was like, I passed this one street. He goes, yeah, that's the street. And
that's amazing. Jason, let me
yeah.
ask you a question now. Air traffic controller. So when we're talking that position, we're talking about you're in the towers, handling planes, having a takeoff and land, as opposed to being on the being embedded and you're having planes do bombing runs, right? That's something. Is that JTAC's different?
Yep,
Okay.
JTACs. I would call it an offshoot of air. Like they use a lot of the same rules and principles. JTACs, Joint Terminal Air Controller. Air traffic control. My job was basically, to put it simply, was to be the pilot's eyes in the skies during inclement weather. So
Okay.
if there was shit weather and their instruments were or were not working, I provided them essentially guidance to get from point A to point B. So I was their eyes in the sky. So you
Okay.
have air traffic controllers that are in the control tower. You have air traffic controllers that are in the radar room. I did both of those. And then I also did air traffic control on the Ronald Reagan as well, which is a
Okay.
different, much faster paced version of air traffic control.
So let me ask you something just off topic now. If you left the military and went to go into civilian as a civilian air traffic controller, I'm assuming you have to go through all the training and stuff, but would it essentially be a piece of cake for you to do that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
depending on the qualifications that the individual obtained while they're in the Navy, or I mean, every branch has air traffic controllers. At least I believe they do. The rules are going to transfer into the civilian sector. They might have their own different nuances,
Right.
but for the most part, the fundamentals are going to be the same. So it's not going to be like learning a new language. It's going to be
Okay.
pretty seamless. Yeah.
All right. So you had to have a huge, very high ASVAB score then, right, to get the air traffic control position?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, higher ASVAB traditionally is required for air traffic control. The ability to deal with complexity is also a necessary thing because you got you're watching numerous things, you're talking, you're coordinating, you got numerous things going on, which again, the childhood I had also prepared me for the complexity of, air traffic control, which again, blessing and curses there.
Okay.
So yeah.
So, all right, you're in Nevada now. How's things going? Do you stay there for a while, or is it just training and then you get shipped out as soon as you get finished?
Nevada, I was there from 2004 to 2009, and that was the first place I got married to a female I dated in high school. So that was kind of the start of that. And yeah, I was there for 5 years. It was a very interesting duty station. Not a whole lot to do other than the traditional sailor things of, extracurricular activities that come with that.
Okay. Are you enjoying yourself at this point? Are you enjoying the career?
It for the most part, absolutely. I mean, it was a fulfilling job. You're doing things, you're working with Top Gun, you're helping people, you're doing things. But it wasn't something that I felt completely fulfilled. I wanted to try and do more things, whether that was, at the time when I was younger, I had aspirations to do, special warfare. I did try and get released from air traffic control to go do that, but unfortunately, I was fully qualified at my job there, so they would not release me. You're basically damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing. So I was valuable, and they would not release me to a different job. Which again, looking back, I don't know that my body could have handled it anyway. So, but that was
everything happens
something.
for a reason. You're always where you're supposed to be.
Yep.
How is personal life at this point?
There was a lot of stress. Again, air traffic control comes with a lot of stress. And unfortunately, naturally, the outlet that I went to was drinking. And in the state of Nevada, you can drink 24/7, 365. Right. So I did absolutely. I developed a drinking became not a daily thing, but a weekend thing. That was like the pressure release valve, if you will. Make it from Monday through Friday, weekend, turn it on, turn and burn, and then start Monday. And then it just kind of became a cyclical cycle of just being stuck in that pattern.
Yeah, it happens easily. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So once his 5 year period passes, what is the next development in your career?
The next after that, I ended up, I wanted again, like I said, do something different, more, not just go to another air station. So I ended up getting orders to the Ronald Reagan, which was based out of San Diego, aircraft carrier based out of San Diego. And that was another, again, completely different version of the Navy. You have, Air Station Navy, and then you have what's referred to as the Fleet Navy. Again, completely different, but a lot more fast paced. You're deploying, you're going to see countries, you're doing, helping pilots put warheads on foreheads type thing. And that was rewarding. Again, a completely different reality. It was definitely enjoyable. Again, definitely good memories I look back on. For the most part, by and large, good memories.
Okay, excellent. And how
Mhm.
long is that lasting that you're on the Ronald Reagan?
That was another 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, like going back to Fallon, I was only supposed to be there for 2 years. But once I got fully qualified, again, you're good at your job, we're going to keep you. So they kept me for a full 5 years, and then they couldn't keep me after that. They had to finally let me go. Then same thing happened when I got to the Ronald Reagan, got qualified there, and I was only supposed to be there for 3 years. But because I was one of the only supervisors there, they kept keeping me and kept me there for another 5 years, which again naturally turned into burnout. You're the one person that's a supervisor towards the end of my time there. So there was a lot placed on me, but being high functioning, I just again turn it and burn it and keep going.
Okay.
And again, I used unfortunately the same drinking outlet that I had developed in Fallon and took it straight to there as well as a coping mechanism to get through.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's always there. It's so easy to reach to, or reach for, and it's just a culture of these organizations. Everyone's doing it essentially. Unfortunately for you, it's a valuable lesson for anyone watching who's going to join the military or government agencies. When you become valuable, they do not want to lose you. So be careful what you do. I've seen so many people kind of get pigeonholed into things they didn't want to stay doing only because they became so valuable to that unit, and that unit did not want to let them go.
Yeah, that was I actually didn't pick up on that. It was a therapist that pointed that out to again once I was in the process of retiring. It was a therapist that pointed that out. I didn't even wasn't even something that was on my radar. I just looked as I was doing my job. My job was to do this. I do my job.
Yep.
But there was, something I learned that you'll understand this from a cop perspective. Not every cop's a cop.
No.
Not it. Exactly. You understand there. I'm saying much behind that. Same thing for air traffic control. Not every air traffic controller is an air traffic controller.
Yep.
And that was something that took me again many years. Again, my work ethic was instilled in me by my, stepdad and grandpa. If you have a job to do, fucking do it well.
Yeah.
And I thank them for that, absolutely. But again, it would have been nice during some of those time frames for others to kind of link up with you and help you carry. Which,
Oh yeah.
It is what it is. Shit happens. Learn from it.
Absolutely. But I'll tell you what, I've never seen too many things destroy morale quicker than you'll get. So you're talking about you being a responsible guy, doing your job well. They want to keep you there. Then you see these other POSs that are horrendous at what they do, but no one wants them. So they keep applying to things, and people let them go because they want to get rid of them. And you see these people ascending to places that they shouldn't be, number one. And number two, they certainly shouldn't be doing them ahead of you. And you're like, what's going on? And then people are like, you know what, man, I'm not even going to try anymore. It's not even worth it. Well, am I going to bust my ass when I can't go anywhere? And this moron's going up the ladder.
Yep. There was numerous instances, involving evals or evaluations. Numerous instances with that where again certain people are getting rated, because it was their time to advance or whatnot. They weren't doing the job. But again, when I was really naive, I kind of just kept my head down and did my job. I didn't play the political game. I don't know how to play the political game.
Yep.
Which bureaucracy, I don't understand any of it. I don't think any of those involved in that shit understand it either. They're just manipulating each other at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But
ass, bro.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I just did my job and took care of my people. And if I was in charge of people, I was a firm believer of not asking others to do what you want to do yourself. So I kind of led with that. That was the mentality I had. I didn't ask people to do something I myself haven't already done or wouldn't do. So that was kind of, again, when I was in charge of individuals on the carrier, that's kind of how I operated. I took care of people. I kind of looked at it as a family. Not everyone did, but, some people looked at it the same way.
Yeah, well, that's leadership right there. Unfortunately, it's not that common.
Yep.
So now 5 years passes on the Ronald Reagan. What's your next step?
I ended up getting stationed at the air traffic control schoolhouse. So when I was on the Reagan, I ended up doing I did my job well, and then I'm getting recognized as air traffic control of the year for the entire military. And I think it was, I don't remember, I think 2000, maybe 12 or some early to that, 2012, 2013, I can't remember what year.
Okay.
But anyways, I ended up being air traffic control of the year. So they sent me to the schoolhouse to teach air traffic control for carrier operations.
That's in Nevada again?
No, that is over in Pensacola, Florida.
Oh, okay. Nice. So you're on a redneck Riviera at least.
Yep.
I love it up
there. Accurate term. So yeah,
Yep.
and I got stationed out there from I believe it was 2014 to 2016, and that was where I ended up teaching air traffic control in the schoolhouse for the carrier operations, and that was kind of it was a good job, again, helping teach people, but it was not it still wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't challenging. And that was something that I really wanted, which I did not get that level of challenge from that job. But again, rewarding job, got to help a lot of people, teach a lot of people. So in that aspect, it was a good job.
All right, great. And then how's personal life going at this point?
2014, again, when you're on a carrier, you're kind of turning and burning. You're constantly, there's always the next time you're going out to sea. So your mind is occupied naturally. Getting stationed at a place, you have a Monday through Friday job, simple 8 to 4 job. It was very slow. So going from, full throttle to nothing, that's when I, again, completely unnoticed, but I started having some realizations of some issues that are undealt with childhood stings, which again, naturally, my turn was to drink on the weekends. And with drinking also came, again, the extracurricular activities with other females.
Okay.
And during that time frame, it was 2015 that I ended up, a young lady, and I ended up doing the dance, and we started developing a relationship, and unbeknownst to me, she decided to stop taking her birth control.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's I did not know people did that, but apparently years later, talking with people in surrounding military areas, that is a very common thing, apparently, which I did not know.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yep. So again, blessing in disguise. That's when my first son was born, was 2015. And that slowly started to help me change. You got responsibilities, and I started trying to turn away from basically all the bad habits I developed over the last years, and to try and be a better father for my son. Tried having a relationship with this young lady, but she had a lot of, how do I put it? A real big sense of entitlement. She wanted a daddy, not a husband, or not a equal. She wanted someone to take care of her, type thing.
Yep.
So that natural, that kind of individual. And then in 2016, that's when I was selected for officer. At this point, I was a E7, so a chief. When I was in Pensacola, and I ended up getting selected for officer. And I turned that appointment down. I didn't want to be an officer because I didn't want to be a paper or pen pusher. And that was a real big turning point, because when that happened, I was blacklisted in my community. It pissed a lot of the air traffic controllers off.
Really?
They wanted, because it affected their fit reps, affected their evaluations, because they didn't get a put on there that they made a new officer. So it affected them.
Okay.
But in doing so, thankfully, call it God, call it Creator, there was an individual at the basically where they assign where you go. And this individual did me a solid and slid my paperwork to Naval Special Warfare and basically got me to get sent to a place called Naval Special Warfare Special Reconnaissance Team 1.
Okay.
And I left Pensacola, and that's when I ended up, screened for Special Warfare to work as an unmanned aerial systems operator. And that was when I got sent from Pensacola to San Diego, which naturally, that started a break in my psyche. Again, going back to the mental health aspect, that started a break in my sight because I was forced to make a decision between bringing a female and my new son with or leaving them behind. And her and I, were not compatible. So I made the choice to leave her in Pensacola. That came with a whole cascading years worth of issues that I'm still dealing with. So ended up going to San Diego and getting stationed at Special Warfare. That was a place I felt at home with the people that were there.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if that's something you've experienced when you go somewhere and you're like, I actually feel at home.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And yeah, that feeling's really hard to describe. But it was a bunch of individuals that were adults, innovative, very intelligent, high functioning, wanting to get after it. Like, again, they were a bunch of good dudes. And I was very happy and honored to be there. So that was a real big turning point, turning away from air traffic control and turning to what I wanted to do, which was be in special warfare into some capacity.
Okay.
Which
do
was,
you get embedded now with the SEAL operators on missions?
The SEAL teams, again, they have their own commands, and then Naval Special Warfare Special Reconnaissance Team 1, or SRT 1 for short. Our job was, we were known as the techs, where it was, unmanned aerial systems. You had Crippies there, intelligence people there, supply. So our job was to augment and be in support of, like I was in support of SEAL Team 3. So whenever SEAL Team 3 deployed, I would my troop would deploy with them as kind of being their aerial, reconnaissance support type role. Which again,
Okay.
absolutely loved that job. It was very fulfilling. It was awesome. Loved it.
Oh, that's great. So now you like training with these guys, or do you guys train separately, like workups and stuff? You guys doing your own thing, and then you link up with them when you guys kind of get deployed, or like how's it work?
For the most part, they're doing their stuff, and then we do our stuff at SRT1. And eventually, it kind of starts on different trajectories, but eventually, the closer you get to deployment, you kind of link up, and then you guys deploy together. That way, it's not, the first time you're meeting them, because, you don't want to meet people the first time in country. Like, hey, by the way, hi.
Oh,
You don't want that. So for the most part, we tried to link up, do certain, training missions with them. I was one of the older guys, or one of the older senior guys, so I didn't get to go as much with the teams. I was more the junior guys that got to go do that. So my job was mainly the planning of operations, basically the planning was kind of where I fell in for that.
Okay. And is this more of like an action-oriented position now?
Oh yeah. It was, somewhat. Still, my job, some UAS guys did go outside the wire and did go actually do some pretty cool things with the SEAL teams. I did not get to do that. My job was more, again, being more the senior enlisted advisor was kind of more my role, which was more administrative, more, again, planning operations. That was kind of more my role. I guess I don't want to use the word managerial, but I didn't get to actually go out.
Gotcha.
With the exception of one time, but that was a different scenario.
Okay. So I'm more of a head shed, but sounds like a very cool position to be in.
Yeah, head shed would be an accurate term. Yeah.
All right. So how long did this last now? This position with the working with the SEAL teams?
That was another total of about 5 years. Which again, by that point, I ended up getting married again. I ended up marrying the same woman again.
Really?
That was yeah.
That's funny.
We got married the first
guys
time.
That I worked. My police squad. 2 different dudes married the same girl, got divorced, and then married the same girl again. Like we were talking one day, like, what are the odds statistically? It was like 31 of us in the squad, and two guys had gotten divorced and then remarried the same girls.
It seems to be, not very common, but it's. I just met again someone else, another veteran. He's same thing, same,
Definitely
very,
happens. Yeah,
yeah.
maybe the time was wrong, and maybe guys weren't mature enough to whatever.
Oh
A
yeah,
lot of different
yeah.
dynamics at play,
Oh
but
yeah.
hey, if it works, it's fantastic.
It did not work, but that was got so at that point, got married again in 2016. Got married again, bought a house, and had a kid all within a year, which
Wow.
was quite difficult. And again, when you're with SRT1, you're constantly in and out. Like the I guess the turn and burn rate, like you're doing constant workups for about a year, and then you deploy for about 6 to 7 months, and then you're down. Then you do workups, you deploy, you're down, you do workups. So it's a constant cycle, which again,
Yep.
naturally, it's very taxing on the family life. And at that point, my when I was married, my then wife was a attorney, and she had her career, and that was obviously difficult on her as well, which I do take that into account. And there was issues, but you know so is life. But that job, going to Iraq twice, I enjoyed Iraq. I thought it was it was to me, that was the military. That's what you join to go do. Not again,
Right.
not to that just speaks more military to me than I guess some of the other jobs. Did it come with its own realizations later on? When my job was to basically find people and help remove them from the earth. That took a little bit of toll later on once I kind of looked back on that and I started asking questions like, where do these intel reports come from? What is this? What is that? I started asking questions, and I had some realizations that we're just doing some things that maybe, is it morally or ethically sound? I'm not too sure at this point anymore. And that was something, again, not to bring him into the conversation, but I was listening to a Sean Ryan podcast the other day, and he kind of touched on something similar to that. Looking back on, I guess, the view that I had then is not the same view that I necessarily have now.
Right.
I do agree that people need to be removed from the earth, but anyhow.
There's a lot of dynamics that go into it. I was actually talking to, I'm in a coaching integration course right now, and I was talking to a special forces. I forgot his rank, but he was an officer. He was pretty high up there, and he was telling me about like one bombing run in particular, and they killed about 3,000 Taliban fighters then. And he's like, at the time, nothing bothered me, and he's like, later on, I would think like, man, those are human beings, and it would kind of bother me a little bit. And I'm like, listen, you're a human being too. There's no reason just because, quote unquote, they're our enemy that it may not affect you. So, he was talking about how difficult it was to deal with that because he didn't want to tell anyone. And, it's not like he had that much compassion for these guys that were trying to kill him. But at the same point, it could be a difficult situation, man. These are very unnatural things that we're doing.
Absolutely. And that's what you're touching on there. That's similar things that I talked to a therapist about. Again, I was there to do a job. I believed in the reason why we were there. And again, sometimes, but that morality aspect of it, helping or removing people from the earth, I don't necessarily know if that's, that's just a difficult one to work through when you start processing that later on,
Yeah, that's one of those things when people have an opinion either way. I'm like, let me tell you something, man. Until you do it, I kind of don't want to hear your opinion. And that was
Absolutely.
the same. That was the same with me in policing. I used to see a lot of, not a lot, but I would see situations where people got in shootings, fatal, and I would read about or hear about guys having difficult problems, and it was actually a good shoot. It was life or death. Deadly force situation was warranted. They would have been killed had they not killed, and then they had difficulty dealing with it afterwards. So I went through it thousands of times in my head. Like, how would I be? I thought I'd be great. Never came to fruition. So I don't want to say how I'd be because I can't tell. I'm not going to say here with this bravado that, yeah, it would have been cool, man. I wouldn't have cared. The only way I would have found out is if I had done that. And then I could have told you how I felt. But That's exactly the way I feel about it. Until you've done it, don't tell me how you would have, been after doing it.
I absolutely respect that. Again, there's the lived experience, and then as you just touched on, those that haven't had a lived experience, they think, you know, usually through their lens of their ego, oh yeah, I'd have been super, whatever, they added their story to it.
Yep.
And again, until you're put in a situation, you truly do not know what decisions you're going to make. You do not know,
Yeah. 100%
you know,
truth.
and that's where I do believe that again, police, first responders, veterans. I do think that again, I don't know how to put this, but I do think that those types of individuals, I don't want to say this isn't, I'm probably not going to word this very well. They're not owed anything, but they should be given a little bit more grace, for after their service, because they typically end up dealing with a lot more than the average individual does. On a daily basis, and you being a street cop, as you mentioned, your stress level through that just one day is likely going to be higher than an individual's maybe week or month. So do you see what I'm saying there? Like that,
Oh,
to
yeah.
me, I think there should be a little bit more grace given to individuals that are from that sort of background.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of it. And what's funny is that in these podcasts, I've had so many special force guys tell me, bro, our job is one thing. We're deployed. We're away from everyone, families. They're like, I can't imagine you guys, firemen, cops, corrections, like you deal with all you deal with, and then you go home and you have to flip the switch and be Mr. Dad or Mr. Husband or, whatever the case may be. So it actually took me by surprise that a lot of those guys felt that way, because I always thought towards a soldier, a soldier sees a lot more than me. And they were like, no, we're over there for 6-9 months, maybe. You're there doing it for decades. You guys, all of them, for the most part, have been very supportive, and I had no idea like that was their mindset. And
Well, I would actually agree with them as well. Again, like what you're touching on, looking at different hats, or again looking at the psychological aspect of it. You had Mike the cop, and then Mike the home guy. So you essentially had two different hats that every single day you were interchanging and putting on. And just like you're saying, most people when you deploy, you're gone for 6 months. So you just hang one hat up and then just grab the other one. So I would venture to say that's an accurate assessment, that it's tomato and tomato at that point, but it's fundamentally similar, but also I would venture that doing it every day is a little bit more difficult.
yeah, potentially. I mean, listen, each of them has their own dynamics attached to them, but either way, I'll respect anyone that was willing to write a check that included their life in something bigger than themselves. So, we're all to be applauded.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot. Again, people that are willing to be of service to others, which again are those roles where again you join to be part of something greater than yourself, to protect those that otherwise could not protect themselves. And I think that
Yeah.
again speaks volumes to the individuals that usually typically choose that.
Yeah, I think so. And we were talking about childhood trauma before. I never realized the amount of us who suffered it. And now looking back, it's the predominant amount of us that go into these careers that have suffered it for reasons such as protecting others, stop bullying, wanting to prove stuff to ourselves or our fathers, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of things wrapped up in that. And, as we go into these things, we probably don't realize it at these young ages. But looking back at an introspective lens, kind of picking apart your life and seeing why you did the things you did, it comes to the forefront that most of us do it for a certain reason, even though we were probably not aware of it at that time.
Absolutely, and looking at that, sometimes what you touched on there, sometimes it's the actual driving force that's necessary to get you through those things. And because I can't remember, I had someone that mentioned something that again, I think it was a therapist or something in that realm, that most people would not willingly run into a fire, whether that's against something that's of that nature. And again, as you're mentioning, there are some people that absolutely would willingly run into that. And again, to save others. I think that again speaks volumes of those types of individuals, but it also talks also equally of their childhood.
Yeah.
But again, I think both can be positive but it can also be negative if it's left unchecked, which, you know, unprocessed experiences can still run the system in the background type thing.
Oh yeah, for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So now you're finishing your career now at this point. Finishing up
After
with
that, I came back from Iraq, and that was during COVID. COVID was interesting, you know. Thankfully for most of it, I was in or the early stages, and a few months of it, I was still in Iraq for it.
Okay.
Came back shortly after coming back from that. I was still married at that point, and transferred from San Diego back to Pensacola to work at an admin job and kind of close out my career and be closer to my first son with my now then wife and our 2 children. So got stationed in Pensacola. At that point, I think I was at 18 years or something, 17, 18 years. And that's when things started completely unraveling. You know, undiagnosed PTSD, undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. And at the time, I was unaware of it, but years later, I was made aware of it. There was also heavy narcissistic abuse. So that came with, you know, basically manipulation. And, you know, that's somewhat what attorneys are. I'm not all attorneys, but some, they're heavily trained in. And that was something I was completely unaware of. I did not know anything about that during that time frame. But then got stationed in Pensacola, Florida. And at this point, as I mentioned earlier, this is where my life completely started changing rapidly. And it was the first time that my then wife and I were in the same house for probably more than 30 or 45 days at a time. Because when I was with SRT1, you're constantly in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out.
Sure.
And at this point, you know, we're finally in the same house, both in a new area, both don't know anybody. And it was kind of one of those ones where I started really rapidly knowing I have no idea who you are, you know, having that realization. And that led me then to seek out mental health via the Navy. And that was when I started getting diagnosed with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And shortly following that, that's when I think it was a few months went by when we first got there in May of 21. And shortly following that, by December, things started completely unraveling. And to the point where she was calling the cops on me, accusing me of domestic violence, which each time that those calls happened, there ended up being no charges, no findings. And it was basically just her false accusations.
Right.
Well, that eventually was ammunition for her to call the Navy and say that I was abusing her. The Navy didn't know anything about the police. Police didn't know anything about the Navy. No one was talking, sort of thing. And she accused me of emotional and psychological abuse. You come to find out that's referred to as a narcissistic projection.
Wow.
So she was accusing me of what she was doing to me. So naturally, the Navy gives her what's known as a no contact order, which basically said I was not allowed in my house. I was not allowed to talk to her, and I was not allowed to talk to our children.
Wow. And there's no allegations of physical abuse. This is all psychological and mental, whatever she's stating. Such as what? What was she stating was happening?
That's the thing. It wasn't anything substantial.
Wow.
But what I've learned over the years is it's whoever makes the first narrative. Whoever makes the first narrative, and that's also bringing back mental health. There was accusations of my PTSD being a problem, which is probably accurate. But again, what does one mean by problem? So that's where misleading starts coming into play.
Right.
But going back to the Navy, so they ended up kicking me out of my house, which is illegal. Navy can't do that, but they still did it anyways. And during this point, I'm still thinking, you know, we're trying to save a marriage. We're trying to actually work through this, which is very naive of me.
Yeah.
And, you know, basically trying to stay with the person that's abusing me. So that kind of tells you my sense of self-worth with that individual at the time. And during that no contact part, I was unaware of this. I was kicked out of the house, couldn't talk to her, couldn't talk to the kids. And she ended up obtaining what's known as a military protection order. So it's one step up. You're familiar with protection order. So it's one step up from a no contact.
Okay.
So that, again, further stamped, no talking, no nothing. And it was at this point, this was in February of 2022.
Excuse me 1 second. How do you even get higher than a no contact order? What else could there be?
What the military's version of a protection order. So it's just another piece of paper, just a step up from no contact to a protection order. It's just fundamental paperwork at that point.
Okay.
And so that was February of 22. And unbeknownst to me at the time, that was when she quite literally, words are important, she quite literally took the children from Florida to Arizona without my knowledge. I had absolutely no idea.
Wow.
Because again, couldn't talk to her, wasn't allowed to go to my own house, wasn't allowed to do any of that. So due to the military protection order being in effect, she was able to take them across state. And this is where it even gets more funny. She's not an Arizona resident. Her mother's in Arizona, so that's why she picked Arizona. She obtains an Arizona protection order over the phone.
What?
Oh, yeah. Taken over the phone. So Arizona, some magistrate in Arizona gives her a protection order because she cited some of the military protection orders. So the Arizona goes, well, I'm sure the military did their due diligence. And they just rubber stamped off of
just piggybacked off of that. Oh my God. That's crazy, brother.
Oh, absolutely. It gets way more fun. And so
can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, the Arizona protection order, think about this. Arizona issued a protection order against, and on the protection order has my Florida address, so they weren't ignorant to me being in Florida. So they issued on the protection order that I was not allowed to go to my home in Florida. I had to surrender my firearms to Florida. So think about that.
What?
Exactly. It makes no sense. It's absolutely absurd. So
Arizona, one state's stipulation is stating that you need to surrender firearms in another state.
Correct.
No jurisdiction. Never heard of that.
Yeah, no jurisdiction whatsoever.
Yeah.
So again, naturally, my arms go in there. I'm like, what is going on? So the Navy, the Navy ends up getting that Arizona protection order. And they end up telling me I need to abide by that Arizona protection order. And naturally, I'm going, dude, does this not make any sense to you guys? Like, this isn't like she kidnapped my kids. Like, any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
But this is why I realized, again, dealing with certain people, they subconsciously realize their error. But they had to double down on the choice that they made and keep looking at me as the bad guy. Does that make sense what I'm trying to articulate there?
Oh, 100%. Ego. I've seen it 100 times.
Yep.
100 times. 1,000 times.
Yep. So with that, and I'll skip a bunch of the other things, but a whole bunch of other shit can happen that was, the command influence. They were trying to basically aggravate me enough so I would erupt. And so that way they could go, see, look, this is why we put the protection order in.
Right.
But thankfully I had, again, my childhood, I had to regulate my emotions very well. So again, blessing and curses there. So I kept myself very contained. There was times where I wanted to pull a Jesus move and fucking flip tables and strangle some people. And especially when the commanding officer looked at me. Mind you, the commanding officer is the one that issued the military protection order. He looked at me across from his fucking table and had a gleam in his eye and said, I'm doubting you want to see your children because you're not doing what's necessary to see them. And that took everything I had within me to not strangle that guy. Because again, you're the reason, courtesy of my ex-wife that gave the false accusations, but you're the reason why I can't see my children.
Yeah.
And again, this going back to the mental health, keep on topic with that. That was when my entire psyche started completely unraveling because of identity. I was no longer a father. I was no longer a husband. I was not really a son because I didn't have contact with my mother or my stepfather. So I became quite literally no one.
Right.
And I believe you understand what I mean by that. When you're made into no one, it's both fuck but it's also years later that was necessary. But going back to the main issue with the military protection, that's kind of why I wanted to spend some time on that. It is absolutely absurd to me, both people in the military and some individuals on the out, that believe a commanding officer has that authority to kick someone out of their house. It's unconstitutional. Or play family law and say you don't get to see your children.
Yeah.
And again, that is absolutely absurd to me. And I'm still in the process. That was in 22. I'm still in the process of fighting that with the Navy.
Wow.
To get that overturned, and we'll get to my court martial and very, very quickly. I'm still, years later, still fighting that. Again, not for me. That's not the reason why I'm trying to fight that. Again, what happened to me, that's in the past, can't do shit about it.
Yep.
But if I can make a big enough uproar and get people to look at this so they can go, we should probably fucking change this. Like, this isn't a good idea. We should look at this shit. Like, we shouldn't be, ripping families apart. Maybe we should fucking look at this.
Yeah, slightly overstepped.
It's a very good choice of words there. Yeah, slight overreach.
Yeah, slight.
And, so back to the protection order, the Arizona, that ended up happening again. My ex-wife ended up obtaining another protection order from a different county. Did the same rinse and repeat, same laundry, list of things that she sold to that judge. And mind you, at this point, I hadn't seen my children in over a year. Wasn't allowed to talk to them. Wasn't allowed to have any contact with them. And they're at this age, my son was 4 and my daughter was 2. So again, think about the detriment that did to young children. Those are pivotal years to remove a father from, and no matter what, that's going to have consequences. It's going to have lingering consequences that usually trickle on the word abandonment. My children ended up having to process things that their mom, my ex-wife, and a command did that removed their father from their life, that they had absolutely no say in.
What's our end game here?
What's what?
What's our end game at this point?
My opinion, just studying this from years, she wanted everybody to look at me so nobody looked at her.
Really?
So if you think about that, because again, a narcissist doesn't want the light shined on them.
No.
Because again, huge ego. They don't want the light looked at them. So
plus people are going to figure them out.
Absolutely correct. Because once somebody starts looking into her, the narrative that she spun, you could just ask a couple questions and it'll completely fall apart.
Yep.
And that's where, again, I've been trying to reach out to people, during that phrase in early 2022, I reached out to numerous political figures that just either ignored me, kicked me off to somebody else, or just didn't want to get involved. And I understandably, they didn't, as family law and the military, they didn't want to get involved. I get it. But when you're in a position and constituents reach out for help, that's kind of your fucking job.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of the reason why you're in that position.
Exactly.
But going back to my kids, like I said, it was about a year, didn't get to talk to them, didn't have any interaction with them. And finally, I ended up having mediation. So this is where it gets even more comical. Mediation with my ex-wife and her attorney and just me. I couldn't afford an attorney because I had no money. I gave all my money to my ex-wife. That's a whole different story.
Okay.
So the mediation, during that, we finally get to the point where it's agreed upon between me and my soon-to-be ex-wife that I can have communication with the kids. So think about that. Florida court is saying I can talk to the kids. Arizona court can't fucking talk to the kids. Navy can't fucking talk to the kids. So, and again, I walk into the Navy and I'm trying to contact Arizona, trying to contact Florida. I'm like, one, can anyone fucking tell me what's going on? Because none of those three talked. None of them knew that anything was happening. And again, mind you, I'm just trying to talk to my children. I'm just trying to be a fucking father. So as you see the kind of the insanity circus show there.
Yep.
Which again, when I talk to other people, it becomes very easily apparent. But when I talk to people in the court system, I'm like, what do you mean? What's the problem? I'm like, can you not fucking see? Like, it's very simple to see.
They don't want to see.
You are correct. When you're part of the system, you don't want to see that the system itself is completely broken.
Yeah. I was in the system and I saw that it was broken. You'd bring paperwork to court or whatever the case may be, knowing that it someone's going to look at it like, oh man, we screwed this up, and then bam, they read it and they're like, nope, they're going to keep pushing the can. They're going to do whatever they can not to change what needs to be changed. It's unbelievable. As you're going through it, you're like, is there something wrong with me right now?
And that right there is, moral injury, again, where your morals are completely different from the group. Yeah. And that was something, again, going back to my command. I was trying to talk with others. I'm like, hey, am I fucked up? Like, am I seeing this complete, like you're just articulated there? Because there was a point, thankfully, I was seeing a psychologist. I thought I was like completely broken and completely fucked up. I was like, maybe I am fucked up.
Yeah.
Maybe this is all me. And that's where I started going down that spiral. Thankfully, I had a psychologist like, Jason, fuck, no, fuck. And was talking to me and talked me back from the ledge.
Yep.
And again, very grateful for that psychologist, because I was starting to convince myself of the lies that were spun about me, because everybody else believed them but me. They ended up later, again, they were completely disproven. Now my court-martial, we'll get to that in a second. But for a while there, I was the only one that believed my story.
Yep.
And everybody else believed hers. But that also showed me, and I don't mean this in absolutes or all or nothing thinking, but that showed me, by and large, a lot of society is quite sexist. They will believe one over the other.
100%.
And not to mention, going back to the mental health aspect of it, once PTSD and Iraq veteran was put into it, I was immediately typecasted.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately typecasted that I'm this individual. I'm fucking dangerous to everybody. And I want to pause there because, again, going back to this mental health type thing, PTSD, are there individuals that completely erupt and they're unable to control their emotions because they're in so much pain and they're just constantly doing this? Absolutely. But on the flip side of that, there are those that are in so much pain that they would not harm anybody else because they know what pain feels like.
Yeah.
I was on that side. I wouldn't harm anybody unless it was needed, unless it was warranted.
Yeah.
Like you and I talked about offline. Unless it's warranted, absolutely. But I would not harm anybody unless it was warranted. So I was on that side. I wouldn't cause anybody harm. But again, go back to the typecast. Court system typecasted me, not the military. I don't want to say the overarching Navy, but this command typecasted me and put me into a box. And one, again, going back to that, like I said, the mental app, that sucks. Because that means those individuals are not seeing you.
Yep.
Which, again, you would think that an individual suffering, rather than being the source of their pain and compounding shit onto it, maybe throw them a fucking lifeline, a fucking raft, something.
Yeah.
But again, I also understand my command, they were trying to justify their decisions, so they kept trying to poke me to get me to erupt, which I refused to do because I knew if I erupt, that would be the last time I saw my children. So I placed my children over destroying them. And I stand by that decision. I would not change that.
Yeah, good for you. Absolutely, brother. So can you walk us through the court-martial?
Yeah, the court-martial. So again, 2022, the military protection order got to put in effect. Court-martial, that happened January of 24. So mind you, 2 years, there was an active military protection order for 2 years. And an active Arizona protection order barring me from seeing my children. Again, just insanity. So go to court-martial. I requested court-martial because the commanding officer, he tried to do what's known as non-judicial punishment. So he wanted to be the judge, jury, and executioner. I said, fuck you. So I requested court-martial to be overseen by independent jury and, to take it out of his hands, essentially.
Right.
And to get there, this is relevant. To rewind just a little bit, I was in the process of being medically retired for PTSD and traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
And during that time frame, that same commanding officer were trying to process me out of the military early. And if you get processed out prior to 20 years, you don't get your pension.
Right.
So he was trying to use fuck shit and trying to kick me out early to fuck me even further, which again, Jesus. I'm like, I don't understand what I did to this guy. what animosity you have towards me, again, but that's neither here nor there. But that also, again, showed me certain types of individuals, when you stand up to their presumed authority, you threaten their identity in the way in which they view themselves.
Absolutely.
So back to the court martial, that happened January of 24. It was about a week long. The Navy's star witness, none other than my ex-wife. So that kind of tells you a lot who their main witness was, the same person that created the false accusations. And she gave her testimony, very convincing. She did what she does, that she's very good at. And this is the funny part. The jury found me overall not guilty of what led to the military protection order in the first place. Right?
Okay.
But then they punished me for violating the military protection order that they just agreed had no basis to exist.
Wow.
So think about that logic and that legal, it's completely incoherent. How are you going to punish me for something that you just said, yeah, we find you not guilty of all the things that led to that protection order being put in place. Oh, but by the way, we're going to punish you for violating something that we all agreed shouldn't have been in place. So they removed me from E8, which is a senior chief, down to E6. Which, again, I don't give a shit about ranks. I don't attach identity into that. But what pissed me off is that is money that could be going to my children. That is money that, again,
sure,
I don't care what happens to me. Do whatever you want to me. I don't give a shit. I'll stand it. But when you hurt me, you also hurt my children. And that fucking pisses me off. Not to mention, again, just the idiocracy of it. You agreed that this shouldn't be in place, but yet you're still punishing me. And there's two things that the government's trial counsel mentioned. One of them, he basically laughed that I was pissed off that the Navy removed me as being a father. He made a remark, which, again, I believe it was a tactic to try and get me in the courtroom to erupt. But again, let him do his thing, because that's most of them are very manipulative. They're trying to elicit an emotional response.
Absolutely.
But I kept my cool, because again, I kept my kids right here in the forefront. And then the other one, which sealed the fate of, I think, the jury's decision, which goes against pretty much everything that an individual. Anyways, the counsel ended up saying that a senior chief should know to follow orders without question. So think about that. Exactly. That goes against military law, goes against military logic. When you're, in my opinion, when you're an upper, you're in the upper enlisted, it is my job to question things.
Yeah.
Not to mention, you agreed that this shit shouldn't be in place. So those are the reasons why I was questioning this in the first place. But I also think it was this talking with other therapists, trying to make sense, meaning making, trying to make sense of things. They believe that it was a shot across the bow, which is if you try and challenge the Navy or your command, this is what will happen to you.
Yeah. Because,
my court-martial, you can pull it up, you can find it, you can find and read about it. So it's public knowledge now. So it's kind of one of those shot across the bow, which I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying in your, your cop world. Same things, just different.
Oh yeah.
Different wording. And that makes sense. Again, if you stand up against this, you're going to be punished for standing up. And again, I stand by what I did. I don't agree with what, again, no one should be able to remove a father or a mother from the house. That the military should just do military things is kind of the point I'm trying to make with that.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens now as a result of everything with the trial, with the court martial?
So they finally find their findings, which is reducing me from E8 to E6. No brig time, no prison time. I still got an honorable discharge. So again, think about that. You reduced me from E8 to E6, but you're still giving me an honorable discharge.
Yep.
That's kind of contradictory. Again, I'm happy as shit they gave me an honorable, because that still allowed me to go to the VA, still allowed me to use VA benefits, all those things. But it's just the math isn't mathing is what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that happened January of 24. February of 24, I'm medically retired. After 20 years, I'm medically retired. Pushed out the door. See you later. Go fuck yourself.
Yep.
And that was, again, towards the unraveling. Things I'll say now, since I'm retired, I sought out ayahuasca during, while I was in.
Yep.
And it was during the heat of it when I started walking towards suicide as being a viable option.
Okay.
And, that was my lowest of lows. Like, I could not pull myself, there's depression and then there's physical, I don't want to be here anymore. So I sought out ayahuasca as a remedy for that. Again, I didn't grow up doing psychedelics. I didn't know shit about psychedelics. I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah, me either.
But somehow, again, it finds you.
Yep.
Somehow ayahuasca found me. And I said, fuck, I'll do anything at this point. I was at that low of a state. I would do anything.
Okay.
So I ended up going to Soul Quest just like you did in 22. And mind you, I had near-death experiences prior that I didn't touch on, but those kind of changed my viewpoint of life in general. And the ayahuasca had a profound, it allowed me to process things that I was going through.
Yep.
Which I was very grateful for. Again, being able to process them real time because I glossed over a lot of things and left several things out. But it allowed me to process things so I could go back and get back in the fight because I was just in it and there was no way I could get out of it.
Right.
So I ended up doing I did 4 retreats of ayahuasca and Bouts all within 6 months.
Okay.
And I did that on purpose because I wanted to completely destroy my sense of self so that I could completely rebuild that. Yep. Again, I'm glad you understand what I'm saying. I wanted to completely lose contact with who I thought I was so that I could rebuild that framework from quite literally the ground up. And that allowed me to get rid of old patterns, old thought patterns, old behavioral patterns, and try to align things with being more truth. I'm very truth oriented. And I believe that is something that's monumentally necessary, is be orientated towards truth. And again, it allowed me to look at myself, again, going back to being married to my narcissist as an ex-wife. It takes a dysfunctional motherfucker to be married to someone like that. It's not just one dysfunctional person. There's 2 dysfunctional people in that. It takes 2 to be dysfunctional.
Yeah. So
I had, again, look at myself. How did I play a role in this? Again, holding up the mirror.
Yeah.
And once I started doing the introspection game, I was like, oh, fuck. You kind of open up the door and I went full at it. I started charging at every demon I had because the way I looked at it, and I think most fathers and, again, most mothers will look at it this way. I'm going to try and get rid of my demons so I don't pass them on to my children.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of
trauma.
100% exactly where I was going with it. Absolutely. I call them demons, generational trauma, same thing.
Yep.
And that became my new mission during that time frame. Again, I had all the other shit going on, but I was like, well, it's just me by myself. What else am I going to do? So I started working on myself. I had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. I started reading as much as possible, started learning as much as possible about myself and the world. And in turn, that created essentially a spiritual awakening, which is the awakening of the spirit within. And that, again, I do credit, one, obviously, to God, creator, whatever name people want to give it. I just use God, same. Everyone's using different words, the same damn thing.
Right.
But I do wholeheartedly agree. And it was something, I think it was Marcus Luttrell mentioned. God put these things on earth for a reason. And to me, again, I think we should pay attention to that. They can be used for good.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that you understand the container, you understand the environment, the setting, those are very, very important. And they should be looked at that way. They should not be looked at as like, oh, I should do this thing every weekend. Absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
You should, again, full on intention, honesty, and again, go into it with that kind of a reverence to it and respect.
Yeah, it's sacred medicine. Plus,
Absolutely.
if you're doing it every weekend, you're not doing the work because the medicine itself's not healing you. It's opening you up. It's bringing you awareness. It's tearing down walls. It's letting you see things from a different perspective. But the medicine itself, it's not doing it. It's the integration. It's the people and places and things that you're changing afterwards that are going to do the actual healing and make lasting change. So if you're chasing that medicine, doing it every week, good luck because you're not going to be making any permanent changes.
I agree. And the kind of the way I view that, and the ayahuasca can kind of help crack you open. It's kind of like being put in a washing machine and just being sent on tumble. Once that washing machine's over, once your journey is over and you come out, you need someone to help you put up your laundry. You need someone to help you make sense of what you went through, which is, again, the integration. And again, thankfully, I have a master's degree in psychology, a certificate in life coaching. And that's something that, again, I just naturally gravitate towards is psychological understanding and meaning making and kind of connecting like you did earlier. You connect your childhood to your this, you connect that and you go, oh shit. And that's again how ayahuasca kind of slowed down time. And I was able to see different parts of my life and go, oh shit. And I would look up and I go, you had me go through that to prepare me for this. Or you had me go through this so that I could do this. And that's when I went, again, I remember viscerally when I went, oh, fuck, you're real. I had that holy shit moment.
Yep.
Which, again, had people knew me years and years ago, listening to me say that, they'd be like, Jason? I'm like, again, God's absolutely undeniably real. Like, undeniably. And again, that's a reoccurring theme that I hear from many people in this psychedelic, again, that are using them intentionally, that aren't using them for escapism, that aren't using them for recreation, that are using them intentionally to heal. It brings them to God. Like they are pursuing God with everything that they have. And again, I think that there's something to that. And I find it fascinating that, society, by and large, through misinformation or through propaganda, will willingly take a chemical, which is human-made, but they will look over at a plant that God made and go, "Oh no, thank you, not for me. Yep. I don't do drugs." And
exactly.
Again, in my head, I'm like, "Dude, you're taking oxy, you're taking this, you're taking that." Again, I was put on those as well. I hated them. I didn't feel shit. Fuck that. Which, again, that's partly what they're for, is to make you numb.
And, but they never get into the root cause of the problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're just brainwashed that to think that pharmaceuticals are the answer to everything. I was at a Veterans and First Responders Only retreat at Soul Quest, and the day after we drank, I was talking to former Green Beret, who said he was on 11 medications the year before. He had consumed ayahuasca the year before. And he said, ever since then, I've needed nothing. And I said, it's funny, though, when you were on 11 medications, if you told your buddies that, they wouldn't even bat an eyelash, right?
Normal.
The second you say ayahuasca, they're looking at you like your head's screwed on sideways, right? He's like, exactly, bro. It's exactly what happens all the time. It's amazing.
And that's the fascinating thing. And I don't have experience with Ibogaine, but ayahuasca, it seems that they touch on similar receptors for the addiction. And like you're touching, people come out of ayahuasca or Ibogaine. Again, I can't speak on Ibogaine. I haven't experienced that. But the effects seem to be very similar in that the addictions are gone, or at least most of them. Like, again, when it comes to the different substances, the addiction is gone. And again, I don't like to go down rabbit holes. I take that back. I do like to go down rabbit holes. And when you understand, and I don't like to have this outlook, but I do believe it's closely aligned to being truthful, there's no profit to be made from a happy and a healthy individual.
No.
So when you look at things like you mentioned, pharmaceuticals, again, are there pharmaceutical drugs that do help people? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to mental health, probably not so much. I think it causes more issues. And with that, again, but when you look at that and you replace the word patient with customer, that viewpoint kind of changes. Again, if I can keep you on these pills for the rest of your life for your SSRIs and keep you on them, I have a continuous stream. And unfortunately, I do think that a lot of psychiatrists, I think that they believe that they're actually doing things that are healthy or doing things that are good when it comes to prescribing those. And I think some of them actually mean well. I do.
Oh yeah.
But and that's where I don't blame them. I think they're just doing what they were taught, and it has cascading consequences. But going back to the bias and the viewpoint, I think it's rapidly changing, rapidly. And I think it's because there's numerous individuals that are not filling the archetypal role of the traditional psychedelic user.
Yeah, my buddy Wiz Buckley says it great. He said the first psychedelic revolution was led by hippies and it was dismissed. The second one is led by first responders and military veterans, and it's not going to be.
Wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree, and I get pumped up when I hear people seeing the same thing like that I'm seeing. Because again, you're south of me, so you and I seeing the same thing in different areas of Florida. To me, that speaks loudly. Now, again, when you open that up to the United States, that's a big, massive movement.
Absolutely.
And again, one, I'm happy to be part of it. Again, there's a couple people and organizations that I do help out with, and I do volunteer my services for these things. And when it comes to people that I talk to, when like the vet center that I'm part of in Newport Richey, the veterans that are there, there's some that are looking for this because they're trying to turn away from those 11 medications that they're on.
Yep.
But unfortunately, not a lot of people know about these things. So what do most people turn from pharmaceuticals and turn to what? Usually alcohol.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm trying to go, hey, come this way. I'm just trying to be a beam of light, jackass jumping up and around. And thankfully, a few have been like, hey, I'll talk to you. I'm like, awesome. Let's talk.
Exactly.
And I think that let's talk is usually what opens up a door for people to choose to walk through. Because I will not push people through a door. I do not believe in that. I believe in autonomy.
Yeah.
Again,
it doesn't do anything anyway. Listen, if you talk someone who's going to rehab and they don't want to be there, nothing's going to happen.
Yep.
You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink in any facet, any part of life. But conversations like this are what need to occur because other men and women who are going through it are going to see us speaking about it if they were not familiar with it before. And number one, hear your experience, and they're going to identify with you. And then listen, even if the first time I heard about psychedelics, I'm like, what? These guys doing hippie drugs? What the hell? Yeah. So for 2 years, brother, I dismissed it. And then all of a sudden the pain became too radical. I needed some more radical healing. And then I started paying attention. And that's what happens with a lot of people. I think the estimate is that on social media, when people watch us, they'll watch us for like 5 to 8 times before they make some type of proactive move to whether it's heal themselves or whatever the case may be. So the people that are sitting in the shadows kind of lurking, looking, watching.
Absolutely.
And, seeing, work for this guy, for this guy. I actually got hit up 2 days ago on a podcast I did. The podcast is kind of gathered around addiction. And I talked openly about my opioid addiction. And I got hit up by a former cop in another state who's going through it. We got in a coaching call last night. And he's going through it, man. He had a tough upbringing, some tough stuff going on. But, bringing light to the fact of psychedelics and, just kind of coaching him through. And he was so just gracious and happy that we spoke. And he's like, it really helped out just by telling my story, just by talking to him, asking him about his and, sitting there and listening with an empathetic ear, because how many people get listened to with empathy and people actually listen to them when they speak? Not many, bro.
I learned that when I was going through my process. Some people would ask me a simple question. Hey, how you doing? I go, fucking thinking about killing myself. And they would actually just keep walking. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Again, going to the listening, some people may listen, but they may not hear you, because listening is different than hearing. And again, I know
Yep.
you understand this too. I hear what's being said and what's also not being said when I sit with people.
Yeah. Or how it's being said. Yeah.
Yep. I listen to all that shit. Again,
Yep.
my childhood. I listened to all that. But going back to what again I like to center back or circle back on is one, when people have this fear of judgment, that I think is what it centers on. I don't want to be associated with that group. Put your fear down. Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Again, if you want to change, you will do everything in your power to change. But that also touches back on you're talking about going to rehab. Until that person wants to change, they can go to rehab by the order of everybody else. They most likely will not do shit because that change has to come from a deep, deep desire within. And that usually, to me, the pattern that I've seen that usually almost always resorts in some sort of change is called God, life, universe, grabbing the individual and pummeling them into rock bottom. I think they need to hit rock bottom on their own. Sometimes people move left and right laterally at rock bottom. I was guilty of that until they eventually go, fuck, something needs to change, and I can't change the environment. Only thing I can change is this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think when people hit that point, again, going back to veterans versus responders and, the like, just the ability for this to be a legal option, that still blows my mind. Again, the vets organization where people, they're going out to a different country.
Yep.
What is going on here? That is, again, like I actually felt a wave of anger, which I haven't felt in a while, come over me there.
Yeah.
Because again, you're a service member or a police officer for same, all warriors, same principle there, serving in a country, and I have to go to a fucking different country to get healed? What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. And with medicines that we know work, they've been used for thousands of years. That's what cracks me up when that psilocybin study was rejected by the VA a few months ago. And was it psilocybin or Ibogaine? I'm forgetting right now.
Well, they're
yeah, they said there wasn't not enough studies done to show the efficacy of these medicines. Yes, they've been used for thousands of years. There's more than enough.
You and I, no, I would say, I shouldn't say no, but you and I probably believe the same reason on why they're being rejected.
Oh, pharmaceutical industry runs the world.
And
big money.
But again, the whole efficacy thing, you can look at the research articles on SSRIs. Majority of them actually say that SSRIs are fucking horrible for the brain. But those are still prescribed very rapidly.
Oh, yeah. And look at the incidence. Right off the bat, one of the contraindications is the incidence of suicide is going to increase when you start them.
I know.
Like right off the bat, my buddy killed himself a week into using them. It's unbelievable.
I think it was may increase suicidal and homicidal ideations, if I remember correctly, and like the term on that. And I remember that. I'm like, you're fucking giving me something. What the fuck?
Yep.
Which again,
should help. But for the first couple of weeks, you just be careful, though, that you don't kill yourself. My dad had fibromyalgia. He was on gabapentin 2 days. The pain actually went away, but he told my mom, and for him to even admit this is mind-boggling, not a guy that talks about anything, or was, he told my mom he was having suicidal thoughts after taking this medication for 2 days. I think it was after the first dose. He was having a suicidal ideology. That blew me away.
That's unfortunate to hear. But again, it also speaks to, again, why, it's kind of a question, why is humanity still doing this? Like, we can all most likely agree these things are not viable for majority of the people. Maybe they work for some people. Maybe they do. But again, as you touched on, they don't get to the root, and they're not meant to. They're meant to be a Band-Aid. They're meant to be a Band-Aid. Go be a mindless zombie. Don't bother anybody.
Yep.
But there are some people that, again, I just use the word warrior, that are like, nah, I want to heal and I want to get better. And I would like to do these things because, one, freedom, there's a big proponent to that, freedom.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that I highly believe in. And to me, that is an individual's right. Again, obviously within reason, within set setting, with environment, all those things in place. If that's something that someone did their due diligence, looked into, and they're like, I believe in this. I want to give this a shot because all these other things haven't worked. I don't see why there's such an upheaval and such an uproar about putting places within the United States called, East Coast, West Coast, North and South. Put 4 places that people can go to do these things.
Right.
I can speculate as to why, but I think, go down those rabbit holes and usually centers on control, in my opinion.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, listen, the revolution's here. It's coming. It can't be stopped. The cat's out of the bag. It's just going to take a little more time to get these systems in place. And listen, they need to be rolled out safely. We don't want, people are going to jump on the fact that there's money to be made here. And if we don't do it properly, you're going to see bad things happening to good people. So, we want it to roll out slowly, but we want it rolled out. All these roadblocks that are getting put in place for reasons other than putting it out safely and, making sure that people do it correctly. That's one thing. But this cash money grab and the pharmaceutical industry having the sway that it's got, that's an entirely different matter. So
and we
can talk about it for days.
And I agree. And again, that's why I respect the legislation that's going on in Texas, via Ibogaine. I respect the hell out of that because I think that's kind of leading the charge, if you will.
Yep.
And then my hope is that once something like that passes, then other states will be like, all right, since they did it, we'll consider doing it. And I think, again, someone just needs to be the first one to do it.
Yeah.
And
I
do,
agree.
again, I could be biased in this thought process, but I do think that, again, veterans, first responders, those types of individuals, by and large, experience more traumatic events than the average individual. So I'm not saying that, civilians shouldn't be allowed this. I'm not saying that. But I do think that certain types of individuals should be the first to go at it because, again, they have a lot more baggage. I'm not saying that some civilians don't. I'm sure as fuck that they do. But as a overarching population, the veteran and first responder community, I think, can handle that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's kind of incumbent upon the governments to offer us that healing modality because, we served our country, we served our community. We were working for something bigger than ourselves to protect the country, to protect the citizens in here. In some respects, it was just a very non-selfish career and doing it for the right reasons. I don't want to say it's owed, but it's kind of owed. Or should be owed.
Again, I said that same thing earlier with the ode, and I was like, I don't like that word because that shows like it's a sense of entitlement. But I get what I get what you're saying in the background, and part of me, and again, I think certain people are starting to already do it. I think one, just having the conversation that's putting things on the table to talk about.
Yep.
And then I think the next step is asking questions. And a phrase that I love is the truth does not mind being questioned. It is a lie that cannot stand to be challenged. So what I mean by that is I think it's going to take certain types of political individuals, either veterans that are politicians or just other individuals, to start asking actual questions.
Yeah.
Because once they start asking the questions and challenging, again, things are going to start breaking apart immediately. And we're going to get to the root reasons, or people will just completely avoid it, but the root reasons why access is being denied. And I think that, again, shining light on that via questions is usually a way to get to the actual root of what is going on. And again, just from Florida, it seems that there's a healthy appetite. Again, I can't speak for everyone or anywhere, but several of the Florida veterans I've talked to and come across, they are highly, highly, highly interested in this.
Yeah.
And I think that the appetite is going to, the increasing of awareness, the appetite is going to create the demand.
Absolutely. 100%, brother. All right, listen, we covered a ton of topics here. Anything that we didn't speak about that you wanted to touch upon?
No, sir. again, I think we touched a wide array of things, and I do want to again thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversation. Again, hopefully, some of the rambling that I did during that either touches someone or reaches someone, or they can relate to it or something. Again, I firmly believe in being of service of others. So if that touches or helps somebody, then I'm happier than hell.
Beautiful, brother. It's very noble, and there was no battling going on here at all. So, I'm sure people loved hearing your story, and it's going to resonate, and hopefully we just change one person's life. Listen, just tell, it's going to be all the links will be in the bio, but if people want to get in touch with you or any organization that you're working with, feel free to tell us about it now. And again, guys, all the links will be in the bio. How do people get in touch with you and or organizations?
I actually did not consider that question. I don't have any social media or anything like that. So I guess the only way for individuals to get in contact with me would unfortunately be through reaching out to you. If that, I don't have any social media or anything like that. So they're reaching out to you. And then if you want to, pass them to me. But I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. If the show resonates with them and they reach out to you, I'll talk with anybody. If they're truly
Beautiful.
serious about healing, I will answer my phone call or phone at any time. I mean that.
Okay. Beautiful. So, guys, you heard that. If you want to speak to Jason, hit me up, Instagram, Resilient Warrior 5778, and then I will put you in touch with Jason, and you guys can take it from there. Brother, it's been fantastic speaking to you. I thank you so much for coming on. Super informative, super entertaining. If this resonates with anyone, please reach out. The medicines are a beautiful thing. We touch on many subjects. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Jason, thank you once again. Guys, I wish you the best. If you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, brother.
Yes, sir.
Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in Greybau uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma